Houston chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. And I'm your host, Veronica V. Sopher. I am thrilled to be here with you because I get to interview all of our amazing members here in the Houston chapter of PRSA. And I've got a great one for you today, too. But before we get started, let's take care of some housekeeping. If you are listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of PRSay. And if you are watching on YouTube or Facebook, drop us some comments, and my guest and I will be sure to connect with you. So we'll go ahead and kick off this episode by inviting Jonathan Diamond to join us. Hi, Jonathan.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us on PRSay.
It's a pleasure.
So, Jonathan, first, before we start talking about media relations, let's just tell our members who you are and how you got into public relations.
Well, I'm the business editor of the Houston Chronicle.
Okay.
So I have had a long career in business journalism. I started out as a reporter in Philadelphia covering the real estate market. I took a little hiatus and was in New York working in the book publishing business, actually as a literary agent, still an editorial role in many ways. And then I moved to Los Angeles and was eventually the editor of the Los Angeles Business Journal. I joined the Chronicle in 2019 after a short stint doing communications for Cedars-Sinai Hospital, the big hospital system in Los Angeles. And then when the pandemic hit and things got weird for everybody, I was actually back in LA for about a year at CoStar News as their West Coast editor. It's a commercial real estate news website and data site. And in December, I came back to Houston to take over the business desk at the Chronicle.
Oh, that's so exciting. And so you have seen all of both sides of it. You know what works and what plays on both sides. So you've got that unique perspective. So give us some insight, for those of us who are constantly trying to curate stories and then pitch them. We've got some struggles and questions that we always work through when working with your folks. But then when we do get that interest from somebody, there's always some follow-up and things that have to happen. So I'm real interested in your perspective based on all of your experience.
Well, while there are differences between the editorial side and the PR side, I mean, I think the one common thread is something that I talk to my folks about, and that's just be prepared and know what you're going into before you pick up the phone and send the email. Knowing your audience is very important. Knowing what the reporters you're reaching out to, the news organization you're reaching out to does, and what its constituency is going to be remarkably helpful. So, pitching me a story about something that's happening in Poughkeepsie, New York, isn't really going to get you anywhere. And, you laugh, but you'd be surprised how often we get stories about, oh, this is happening in California. Wouldn't you like to write about that? And it's like, no, I serve a Houston audience. So there's that. And our business desk, when I got here in 2019, it was a bit larger than it is now. So we've had some consolidation, some downsizing. And there's some things that we just don't cover the way we used to. And there's some things that we still focus on. And so whether it's us or Bloomberg or Reuters or the Wall Street Journal or the San Antonio Express News, knowing what they cover and who their audience is really important. Makes your pitches far more effective.
Yes, absolutely. And what do you think is the biggest mistake PR professionals make when we're pitching? Once we've decided we've got the right the right desk and the right publication. Once we get past that hurdle, what do you think is the biggest mistake that we are making?
I mean, assuming that you've found the right person and have the good pitch, really the worst thing that really is not being responsive once you've made that contact. If a reporter expresses interest, not following up is a problem. And frankly, I guess the other close second would be a lack of candor. Reporters, you have to kind of be careful what you ask for. If you pitch a story to a good reporter, they're going to press to find out as much detail about circumstances as they can. And, some of those things your client may not want to discuss. And so, the best thing really is just to be candid and say, look, that's outside the realm of what they want to talk about. And it may or may not have an impact on the story or how the story gets done. But, it's better than ghosting somebody or
absolutely
not being truthful. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the worst thing you could do, but I'm sure you've had some stories in your past that you could tell us of bad practices.
Probably, although I tend to I want to focus on the positive. I mean,
Absolutely.
I can't give you a worst case, although I'm sure if I really thought of it, I could come
Yeah.
up with it.
No, of course. So for someone who's new to the Houston market or who is new to the profession, most of us spent time as interns, really learning the do's and don'ts. What are some good pieces of advice that you would offer to someone, especially when we're talking about garnering a reporter's interest, or maybe for TV in particular, maybe a producer's interest, or an assignment editor? What are some of the things we need to be thinking about as we are crafting?
Yeah, it's interesting because print and digital journalism are a little different than broadcast, whether visual or radio, and so again, it comes back to thinking about who you're targeting. I mean, my assumption, I haven't worked in TV, but my assumption is that there should really be a visual component to your story, and particularly one that's dynamic. I'm really interested in visuals too for for both print and our web product.
Right, your digital, right.
Yeah, but that's and we are starting to do some more video, but it's those are still images, but things need to be visually interesting as well as have some context and some reason you're asking these reporters to follow up on them. So, everyone's definition of news may vary, but there's got to be something other than these people are interesting people.
Right.
So, there's lots of interesting people. So.
Yeah. And on the business desk, what appeals to you in particular? So let's talk about, your day-to-day from a business perspective. If are you more interested, or is it going to be a better connection with like oil and gas folks, healthcare folks versus nonprofits? What's your kind of sweet spot there?
So the primary areas of focus for us are energy, oil and gas, and energy transition now. And real estate. Those tend to be the two core, the two core areas of coverage for us. We've got a robust coverage of the retail market. We're increasing our coverage of both our communities. We're making an effort to reach out into communities outside the loop here in Houston that haven't necessarily been covered by the media the way they should be, and as well as the wealthier side of the market, and in part, the things that are of interest. I mean, first and foremost, good stories. I mean, if there is a strong narrative that has what any good narrative has, tension, conflict with a little c, and some kind of compelling characters in it, that's going to be great. Love transaction stories. Somebody's investing in someone else. There's a purchase that happens, and our readers. We're paying really close. It's one of the interesting changes in print journalism, particularly. It used to be that business editors and other editors would decide what people wanted to read. Now we get a chance by looking at the data to see what people actually are interested in, and so we can tell them those stories. Texas, I am, as I mentioned, not a native Texan, and I haven't been in Houston all that long. There is clearly an affection for certain brands in Texas and in the Houston area. I mean, you can never go wrong about writing about a big supermarket chain that's based here, or
that's right.
Not to play favorites, but it gets a lot of traffic. And so, if your clients are, recognizable brands, obviously, and they're doing, something that's a transaction or a new initiative. Those often get a lot of attention. Also, data stories, particularly in my case, as they focus on Houston, the greater Houston area, and to some extent Texas. If there are, reports your clients do that place Houston or Texas in a context, best places to retire, most disposable income spent on automobiles. Those things generate a lot of interest for us too. And it's, in many respects, it's sort of community service journalism. This is what your environment is like. Mm-hmm. So transactions, trends, well-known brands, and sort of things that serve communities. We're focusing now a lot more on, with our energy coverage in particular, there's a lot of competition in this market for, earnings reports from ExxonMobil, for instance, mm-hmm. which Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg and Reuters are all going to write up. So we still cover those things, but we're looking more for energy transition, which is happening really here to a great extent, and how these things affect people who work in the industry. Everything from, how it affects work at a refinery to what it means for your electric bills. Mm-hmm. So consumer-focused journalism as well.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, those are really great. Those are great stories. I can hear a lot of wheels turning in some of our listeners' minds, just thinking about, I've got a story I can pitch. So, Jonathan, how's the most effective way, do you think, to pitch currently to print journalists? Because I know back in the day, we would format these beautiful press releases. We would send them as a PDF, then we'd email them to you. And then, before that we were faxing, but now oftentimes I'll talk to reporters and they're like, you know what, just send me a DM or just send me a text. And I didn't know if that was true for print today.
Every reporter probably is a little bit different. And so it's worth cultivating a relationship with a reporter anyway, to find out what they like. It's interesting the way it's a combination of technology and pandemic. A lot of the desk phones are gone. So calling people probably doesn't work unless they give you their cell number.
Right.
And yeah, so from my experience, email is best because I can deal with it on my own time. And I'll confess, sometimes not deal with it. I try to be, I'll only speak for myself. I can't speak for the rest of my staff, but excuse me, I try to be courteous. I mean, if somebody is pitching the right thing, but just to the wrong place, or it's close, but just not right, I'll respond. I try to respond relatively quickly and say, I don't think this is right for us. If they pitch me something that is a story about Southern California and trends happening there, I will probably not respond to it just because it's not worth my time. But yeah. I guess my advice would be, start with an email because someone can deal with it on their own time. And then if there's interest, you develop a relationship. And, of a half dozen reporters, some may want the DMs, some may want email, some will give you their cell phone and say, just call me. So it's part of being prepared and knowing your audience the way we need to know ours.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, Jonathan, those are really great pieces of advice. I so appreciate your time. How can people connect with you? How do you prefer they reach out? Should we just put your email address out there? Do you want people to reach out via LinkedIn? What do you think is going to be the best way to reach you?
I'm sorry, you froze up for a second there. But yeah, email is probably best for me.
Okay.
And again, Houston, anything of Houston, based in Houston, centered in Houston, I'd be interested in taking a look at.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us on PRSay.
It's been a pleasure, Veronica.
Have a great one.
Thank you.
All right. That wraps up this episode. Make sure you connect with Jonathan if it sounds like a good fit for you. Contact information will be in the show notes. If you are listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes of PRSay. And if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube, drop us some comments and Jonathan and I will be sure to get back to you because we want to connect and answer any questions that you might have. So with that, I will wrap up this episode and we will catch you next time.